Hello once again, everybody. We are back and we are again here to help Gordon Dill with our consumer expert, Diane Lee. Diane, we're going to talk first today about what has been a rite of passage for so many people, getting that job while you're still a student.
Yeah, and you're at a vulnerable time because you're excited to get out into the workforce, and it's a time when scammers know that they can really take advantage of you.
The losses from job scams have jumped nearly 80% in recent years, according to the Federal Trade Commission. That translates to nearly $500 million a year stolen from people just trying to find work. I'm 7 News consumer anchor Diane Lee, and unlike a lot of scams I report on, this type is most successful on younger adults, especially students and new grads looking for their first big break. It's hard enough job hunting without becoming prey to scammers. Furman Jr. Audrey Enghauser says job seekers have to be cautious.
When I was on LinkedIn, I saw a message that was just asking, like, would you like to work part-time, like from home, flexible hours, that kind of thing. And I've gotten a lot of those, so it just seems like those aren't really credible.
But still, thousands fall victim. The Federal Trade Commission finds the median loss per victim is $2,000. Jennifer Stoner with Furman University's Career Center says the warning signs are often missed.
We had one student in a while back who was just about to send some money.
What was the ploy?
I got into the offer letter stage and send us money so that we can get your computer and get you set up.
And what was the reaction of that student when he found out?
Shocked. It looked totally legitimate.
Let's take a closer look at one bogus job offer to highlight the red flags. Part-time, work from home, flexible hours, high pay. Too good to be true. Plus, it comes from a Hotmail address instead of a company address and wants you to connect with them on WhatsApp. Too obvious? Stoner says the level of complexity only rises.
Some of these scams are sophisticated enough to actually put you through an interview process. You never see a human being. There's a red flag. But they can put you through a digital interview process, maybe ask for your personal information, your bank account, so we can send you your check.
To avoid these scams, always research the company, cross-reference job postings on the company's official website, and don't ever put sensitive or financial information on applications.
A recent report by the Identity Theft Resource Center finds in 1 year, job scams jumped 118%. That spike fueled in part by artificial intelligence, which can scour social media to tailor scams right to you.
AI is also helping scammers create job listings and recruitment messages that sound more believable, refining the pitch and correcting grammar.
Does AI concern you?
I would say, yeah, in terms of these job scams, we think we know what a scam looks like and some of the things to watch out for. But with AI, everything's so new and we might not know anything about what really AI could do.
Andrew McCaskill with LinkedIn says AI is one reason the company has taken stronger measures to protect users.
What is LinkedIn doing to try to prevent scams from reaching your members?
We began introducing verification in 2022, beginning with the About This profile. So users can then take a look at the profile and see when was this profile created. If a profile of a recruiter has just been created in the last couple of months, that could be a red flag.
Enghauser managed to find a summer internship, and when it comes time to graduate, she, like so many other job seekers, will keep her guard up along with her hopes up of landing a perfect job.
Now, the FTC finds younger adults are 5 times more likely to lose money to a job scam than older adults.
I don't think any of us are immune. This was the thing when I was in college 800 years ago. These job scams. When I was coming in, it was a lot of your pyramid, multi-level marketing scams, sort of disguised as sales jobs. But I have to imagine, and you do mention this in your story, Diane, that AI and the internet and that very specific targeted message must make this so much more difficult to spot.
Yeah, really. And that combined with social media too, because so many students nowadays, and we don't just want to say students, really all of us, put a lot of our private information out on social media. And we don't think that we're doing it, Gordon, because it might just be one post here once a year. But with the advent of AI, and really even before that, you can have this conglomerate situation where scammers
and marketers and then scammers can get access to a whole file, a dossier on people. And so they can scour your social media for the past many, many years. And it might just be a handful of posts, but those posts could reveal so much about you that they can use then as the ploy. So they could see what your interests are. Maybe you play a musical instrument, or you like mathematics or something like that. And then the scammers could reach out to you saying, we see that you're excellent in mathematics, and we are looking for a position where, someone with a mind like yours. And, they play into what your likes and dislikes are as well.
It does make it easier to really target you, just like marketers are doing. These scammers are targeting you in that way too. And you point to another red flag that used to be a more obvious red flag, that you can work from home and you'll be getting $2,000 a week from your couch. But people do work from home a lot more often now. So that is a little bit harder for people to sniff out, that particular red flag.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, because obviously ever since COVID, really working from home became much more of a thing. I remember doing a story on this very issue well before COVID, and we used to say number one flag is if they say you can work from home, probably too good to be true. That's not the case anymore. There are a lot of employers that still offer at least some remote work, but that is just one part that you want to look at. If you combine work from home with a really high pay and not many hours and all those kind of combinations that we talked about in the piece, then you really have to be leery, and that's a big sign that it might be a scam.
Yeah, I looked up the, you showed a WhatsApp number. I think it's going to roll through here on this video in a minute. I looked up the country code on it, and it was, if you see that plus, here it is.
Yeah.
That +64, that's New Zealand. Kind of a red flag, right? So those are the kind of things still that should stand out to you, WhatsApp in particular. But we do this with a lot of those impersonation scams that you've told us about, Diane, where if you check the email address where it's coming from, sometimes it doesn't say, I apply for a job at Arby's, and it's not from Arby's.com, it's from Hotmail. That's a red flag.
Right. Also, you might have these situations where they can manipulate the email address to create a name. So perhaps it would be the name they would put in Arby's in there, to use that example. Of course, there would be no scams coming from Arby's, just want to say that. But they would put in that proper name. And if you don't hover over the email address and make the actual address come up with the .com, then you may be fooled into thinking that that comes from a different source than it actually comes from.
It's sort of a lot of these scams we talk about, Diane, they prey on either, greed. You want to take an opportunity. In this case, it is preying on people when they're desperate.
Yeah,
definitely. When you're really desperate to come out of school, or you're in school and paying for it to find work.
Right. And the reason why scammers love job scams is because think about the private information that is required once you get to a certain level in the application process. That's why some of these scams are so tricky, because they'll get you deep enough that it makes sense to you that you would have to provide your social security number, because of course, if you're going to be given employment and you're being offered this job after job interviews and countless weeks of interaction with the scammers, then you think, sure, of course I need to give that. And in a legitimate job, you very well might have to give your social security number and a whole lot of other information. So that's why this is such a lucrative scam in terms of stealing your private information. But I also mentioned in the piece, Gordon, the financial aspect. So scammers are capitalizing there, not just stealing the private information, which can lead to, a good situation for the scammers financially, but also stealing your actual money by making up these ploys that they need your banking account information to deposit your future paychecks.
Sure. Or as you mentioned in the story, you have to use this kind of laptop and this kind of software to work from home at our job. Send us $2,000, which should be a huge,
that's a big
red flag, right?
Yeah.
Pay us so we can pay you.
That's why we think a lot more of the younger folks, a lot of more students are falling victim to this, because that might be a particular scenario where someone who's been in the workforce for a while would know that there are very few employers, in fact, I can't name any, that would require you to buy your own equipment like that. But maybe some of the students may not realize that that's usually not how it works, that usually an employer would provide a laptop for an employee.
It does make sense. And you mentioned this a little bit, but I wonder how sophisticated these scams are in the sense, when you're doing your tax information, when you're filling out all the information so you'll get your W-2 at the end of the year, they're going to have your social security number. They're going to have your bank account routing number. They're going to have your home address, your birthday, everything in the world a scammer wants. Is there a next level to these scams that you've seen where somebody does maybe give you some work to do, give you a paycheck one time, and then they get all that information from your tax? Or is this the kind of thing that blows up immediately?
No, absolutely, Gordon. There are those scenarios. In fact, I've seen a recent
uptick in scams, job scams, where people actually are given a few weeks of employment and actually do get a first paycheck in sorts. Usually they're being paid through places that you wouldn't normally be paid in a paycheck, like through, PayPal or something like that. But in the end, or really Bitcoin is usually what it is. But in the end, they'll get that first amount and really think it's legit. And that's where scammers will up the ante and really take them for a lot more money.
That's how you build up the trust, right? I mean, this is not just unique to employment scams, but it's here, deposit this $100. Oh, great. I deposit $200. And next thing you know, you're out 5,000.
Yeah, building trust, and then you hit them with it. And that's why we also wanted to highlight the tools that LinkedIn provides, because LinkedIn does admit that this is an uphill battle for them, that there are a lot of fake pages, unfortunately, and they're constantly, researching and taking those down. And it's really up to people who see those to report them. But that tool that we provided where you can check to see how long a page has been in existence. So for instance, if you have a high-level corporate person or an HR corporate person who's reaching out with a reputable company, that person will probably have created that page longer than just the last few months. So it's really, really crucial, that one technique. Also looking for, the marking of that person is authentic, any markings that LinkedIn provides. That is just so essential nowadays, because you will get a lot of messages, and it's up to you to, unfortunately, sniff out what's real and what's not.
It's just, no matter what era you're in, no matter what you're trying to do, someone is trying to steal your money, and now it's young job seekers who are targets out there. All right, Diane, a couple of tools there for you to try and protect yourself against these job scams. If you're a young person out there looking for a job, best of luck to you. It is really tough, and as you say, you've got to keep your guard up. We're going to come back with another great way to protect yourself from a scam when we come back after a quick break. And welcome back. We are here to help with consumer expert Diane Lee, Gordon Dill. We're going to talk about something, Diane, that keeps me up at night almost every single night, because I have 2 adult daughters. So this is something that we have been stressing out about a long time. Diane, paying for big events like a wedding without breaking the bank.
Well, Gordon, I really hope I can give you and some other parents and families out there some good ideas for how to save more on big events.
Marking a special occasion like a big birthday or graduation is always more meaningful when you share it with loved ones. But putting on a big event, especially a wedding, can be really costly. I'm 7 News consumer anchor Diane Lee with expert advice on how to host big events on small budgets.
Today's the day when we become one.
There were a lot of things beyond the control of bride Lacey Reeves when she married her husband in 2020. It wasn't just the height of COVID, but it also rained on her wedding day.
I woke up the day of my wedding and I didn't have any stress. I mean, they did have to tell me, okay, so we're going with the rain plan, but it's gonna be great.
Part of what reduced that stress was wedding planner Essence Pugh, whose company, A Touch of Essence, just won the Best in South Carolina Regional Event Planning Award.
So obviously, planners take a fee. So how can a planner actually save you money?
So I think it's all about, does your planner have amazing partnerships? Are they able to connect and negotiate?
For instance, Reeves says her venue choice, Greer's historic City Hall and amphitheater, saved her thousands when compared to a hotel.
We got married in the park. We had to go inside because of rain, but we were scoping out venues that were very budget conscious as well.
Pugh also offers these pointers for extra savings on weddings. Start with a budget that designates the top 3 desires and be flexible on everything else. Choose a reception venue in the same location as the ceremony. And the biggest cost cutter, narrowing down that invite list.
I always ask my couples, if this person were to call you today and say, hey, can I borrow $200? Would you take a step back and say, oh my goodness, why are you calling and asking me for money? Well, it's kind of like that for your wedding day.
As for hosting other events like a special evening or a birthday bash, event planner Ashley Sheehan, who runs the 2010 agency, has clever ways to save, starting with avoiding costly florists.
I think a great place to get your flowers is Trader Joe's. Go early in the morning. They have usually a great selection.
Sheehan also says you can save on balloon arrangements like an arch by using a do-it-yourself kit sold on Amazon for about $30.
Any other ways to save you think is important?
Okay, yeah, I think picking the time of day is really important and can change your budget.
That's because a late afternoon or mid-morning gathering means you don't have to cover lunch or dinner. Now, when it comes to low-cost decorations, don't overlook places like the Dollar Tree that have ample candles, vases, colored tablecloths, and matching plates and napkins, plus fun accessories from paper lanterns to drink stirrers.
And there's also plenty of party themes to give you low-cost ideas, like Hawaiian and Mexican, plus graduation, also pool party, not to mention patriotic, with a lot of options for whatever you need.
Back to weddings, Reeves offers more ways to save if you're flexible on music.
The person that sang at our wedding was a musician friend, and so we were able to save there.
And finally, Pew offers her clients some creative ways to have their flowers and pay less too.
Maybe the centerpieces that are low are fresh, and everything that's tall and high elevated is faux.
Oh, that's clever.
Yes.
Reeves recommending couples never underestimate the value of starting off a marriage on sound financial footing.
A lot of people will get into debt for one day of their life. That wasn't what I wanted to do, and I wouldn't recommend that. We definitely walked into marriage not in debt because of a wedding.
What it all comes down to is you have to come up with a plan to stay on budget. And when in doubt, sites like Pinterest and Instagram are chock full of low-cost ideas.
Let's start with that first thing, Diane, budget. Are you saying set up, this is how much money we're going to spend on wedding. This is how much money we're going to spend on graduation, and that's it. We're working within that framework.
The most important first step you must do. And it's really important to try to keep that budget in mind with every vendor that you're speaking with. In fact, the next step you would do is not to go and find your favorite vendor and pay them first and just assume that all the other stuff will fall into the rest of your budget. You really have to have a comprehensive understanding of how much is the space going to cost, but how much is the food going to cost, how much is the flowers going to cost, the photography, the wedding dress. You need to have an understanding, at least a pretty firm understanding of all the expenses so that you can then move on to the next step. Gordon, if you want to kind of show those steps that we have up there. So it would be to pick those top three desires. For instance, for my own wedding, I knew that I love flowers, but I wasn't, that's not going to be my big thing, right? I was completely willing to be very flexible on the flowers, reduce it quite a lot, and then I didn't have to have, and same thing with the photography. I didn't buy the photos. I just asked for, at that time it was a DVD, Gordon, do you remember those?
Oh, sure.
But yes, so I just asked for digital copies and not prints, and then I was able to spend more of the money because I was really much more into the actual venue, and that's where I put the bulk. But if you know what the general costs of all of those breakdowns before you go ahead and book with one vendor, then you won't get into trouble.
That's a good idea. You know, at my wedding, we put those little disposable cameras on every table, and that's where we got the bulk of our pictures from. Is just
those are the best.
Taking all those behind. Those are the best ones.
Yeah.
Those are the ones kind of
and for that matter, real quick, Gordon, on that note, nowadays just ask your guests to take a bunch of photos with their cell phones and then create a an email listserv or something easy, or hashtag that they can send it to, and you can collect such great candid photos that way.
A very, very good idea. I have to point out that your wedding planner's advice of who would you lend $200 to? My kids are going to be disappointed when there's 5 people at their wedding. That's about all the people.
Yeah, we wouldn't lend that much. But actually, it's really good to think of it. It helps you narrow down that list.
Sure.
I mean, you don't have to hold that to be the case for everybody, because sometimes, Gordon, you might want to invite certain friends to your daughter's wedding that she might not want to invite. So you might disagree on that. But long story short, it's a good litmus test.
Very, very good idea. And I have to pull this up because I saw the pictures here from your couple's wedding that got married at, and maybe it'll cycle through here in a second, at Greer City Hall and Greer City Park, which is something I don't think I would have thought of, a city hall and a city park. But their pictures are gorgeous, and that is a beautiful venue. And look at this price list that we have for Greer City Park and Greer. Look at this. Compare this to actual full-time wedding venues or big ballrooms at hotels. This is a fraction of that cost.
It's amazing, and there's so many options. For instance, there's the amphitheater where you could, for Lacey Reeves, who we spoke to, she had originally wanted to get married in the amphitheater and then move into the inside space. But the amphitheater, you can have it at certain times of days or certain days of the week that you can see are different prices. And then if you scroll down, Gordon, you'll see the inside option. So she paid for certain privileges privileged to be able to have both the amphitheater and then the inside option, which was very smart because she ended up needing the inside option for most of the day. But still, even with that wonderful event hall space within City Hall, that is a historic building, by the way, and was beautifully decorated, as you said, you could see from her photos, she still saves so much money over a big name hotel. And if that is one way that you can reduce the price, then you could spend more money on something else. I think she her budget on her dress was a little higher than mine, so that was more important to her. So she was able to make that happen with regards to reducing the venue cost.
It is interesting too how quickly with these big events, and I keep coming back to wedding, that's the most obvious one, the one that does break people's banks, but any of these things, graduations, birthdays, any of these big events, how quickly these costs can spiral out of control, especially as the guest list grows, as the food expense grows. You can find yourself actually in significant debt from this.
You can, and that's why I was really glad that Lacey Reeves talked about how so many couples do end up that way. Mm-hmm. I will tell you, and I was so grateful to my own father for, like you've been talking about, for covering my wedding. And I decided to do it differently than my sister, who's a couple years older and got married several years before I did. She wanted the big wedding, and I decided to cut my budget in half. And I asked him if it would be okay if I got married in a completely different location, a different state even, to reduce the cost, and then be able to take that other half and put it towards the down payment of my house. Best decision
great.
I ever made. I was very happy because they wanted to be fair with me and my sister. And if people make those kind of decisions, remember, it's one day, but the rest of your life, think of what it could do for you if you use that money on a house instead. So
think of how it could hurt you if you're paying on that debt
right.
the first 10, 15 years of your marriage. It's funny you say that because when we got engaged, my wife and I, we talked to her parents about it, and she joked, my now mother-in-law, how about instead of a wedding, we give you money for a down payment of a house?
Amazing.
And both Beth and I went, yes!
Did you take her up on it?
No, she was just kidding.
She was kidding.
A down payment of a house. But still, you're right. Any way you can sort of budget that money. In fact, another idea that a friend of mine is going through now is he set a budget and he told his daughter, you can spend this much money, you can spend all of it on the wedding, or if you find a way to spend less than that, the remainder of it is yours to start the marriage with. So in either event, you're still working from a budget, which at all points, as you point out, is the most important thing.
Yeah, and for me, I had an absolutely beautiful wedding, but I was so motivated knowing that my father gave me that second option that you were just talking about, Gordon. I also have to acknowledge, obviously, a lot of people are getting married older. Many people are paying for their own weddings nowadays, and so that's just another reason to not start off the marriage in debt. And there are ways that you can do it. And then when it comes to these other big events, that's why we kind of brought in these options, because some people never visit some of these stores that have just a lot of things that make things fun but do not cost much. And so that's why we sort of wanted to share those other options for the other parties.
And look at this. This is the video from their City Park City Hall reception. It looks gorgeous. It really does. They did a great job.
Oh, they did. And she had a beautiful flower arch that she could really focus on. It was like one of the main things that she wanted. And in the setting of that historic City Hall event space, it was just beautiful, as you can see. And then they walked outside in the amphitheater, and it was just a beautiful wedding altogether.
They did a wonderful job. And of course, as we saw from your story, you're hosting a piñata pool party coming up that we all can't wait to come to. Hopefully,
I'm glad you got the invite.
Hopefully a big invite to that. I just, the last thing about these prices, I used to have a friend who joked that when it comes to weddings, you could go into a store and say, I need a box of tissue. And they'd say, oh, that's $3. And you say, great, I'm using it for a wedding. Oh, wedding tissue.
Right.
That's $33. That it's unbelievable the way these things stack up.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought up that point, because there is that surcharge that you get immediately when you say wedding. And so you can be smart in your research. So when you're making these phone calls, you can check on dates. And for instance, renting an event space at a place like the City Hall, they're not going to upcharge you for a wedding versus something else. So keep that in mind. But you can check check on the dates and maybe not mention wedding up front and see if that price changes. And it is a very unfortunate thing. I mean, and people are spending, Gordon, you'll be amazed, but it's $35,000 is now the average cost for a wedding. I know. But okay, food.
I have 2 kids, Diane.
I know, I'm so sorry. But food, Gordon, here's how you can save it, all right? So with food, that's where you can really make the savings. Instead of having the sit-down plated dinner, if you can do a fun tapas, which I've been to weddings, and that's been some of my favorite experiences. You go get what you want, or, just a fun buffet even. People love that, and it's much less expensive. So all those little things you can do to save more really do add up. You just have to look into them.
It's just a reminder when you're planning these big events, there is a reason you're having it, and that's the thing to keep your eye on all the time.
Yes.
It's not all the stuff you're spending the money
Definitely.
on, which is true. Diane Lee, consumer expert, trying to help us save a little money on the thing that is keeping me up at night for sure. We hope we've been able to help you a little bit today. We've got some more great scam avoiding, money saving ideas when you join us next time when we are here to help.